Hey, what's going on, everyone? Titus here, and we're going to talk about the ban list. It did drop or announce that there would be a ban list dropped early this morning. I wasn't able to make a video and stuff, so you're seeing it today on Wednesday because I work. It is what it is. My initial impressions are this is a step in the right direction. But there are a couple things that we missed in particular with best of one format. Casual players might constantly hear me complaining about best of one format. But as I explained in the video is, with the Duelist Cup is, Master Duel was initially announced to be a competitive area for people to play on a official sponsored simulator. That's not the case because it doesn't follow the same TCG ban list. It doesn't do best of three, which sideboarding is a major factor in Yu-Gi-Oh! And really, they kind of tonally shifted to the casual market, which in a business standpoint from Konami is the best idea they could have done. Appealing to casual players is great, but you need to really address some of the things that make casual playing like unfun, I guess you could say. But let's go ahead and talk about this ban list here, and we're actually going to go by the bans first, and then we'll work our way up from the limiteds. The first one that we're going to talk about is VFD, True King of All Calamities. Good, bye, see ya. He was gone in the TCG. He's super oppressive, very annoying, very easy to summon in the deck of Virtual World. I watched Farfa's video and I looked at some Reddit and some Twitter stuff, and apparently the top decks in Duelist Cup, like a couple out of the top 10, I don't know the exact numbers that they talked about, but quite a few out of the top 10 were running Virtual World. It was basically first to summon VFD wins the game. That was it. That was the game. Summon VFD, and you win. That's kind of crazy. The fact that VFD could have that much of an impact, that in the top competitive scene, even against Tankies Sword Soul or Synchro Sword Soul, that VFD was the top deck, and that just kind of goes to show you how oppressive VFD can be. So this hit makes Virtual World have to. It doesn't kill Virtual World per se. Except, well, I should run that back a little bit. It killed Virtual World in the TCG. The brickiness that Virtual World can have, along with no longer having this insane boss monster, kind of killed Virtual World, but it's still a good deck. It's a good rogue contender deck in terms of the tier list of meta. But this card needed to go. And the next one that really needed to go was Imperial Order. This card didn't even need to be around. There's an argument to say that that cards that don't allow you to play certain parts of the game shouldn't be allowed. I understand that argument a lot. I get it. At the same time, there are certain decks that, because Konami is doing a money game where they just released an archetype that is really good, like tier 1, maybe tier 0.5, and IO is the only thing that beats them, or say another card called Anti-Spell Fragrance is the only things that beat them, but it doesn't allow them to play their spell cards. Well, that does kind of shift the tone of the game, that it makes it so that they're not the top dog. But that's different with the TCG. The TCG has a sideboard where you can side in Twin Twisters, Cosmic Cyclones, things that are quick removal to get rid of those cards. In Master Duel, you can't do that. You either are main decking them and you get lucky, or you don't and you lose immediately. And so you can't prepare for that. So IO basically needs to go out of Master Duel format. And the same thing is with Vanity's Emptiness. See ya. Bye. We'll talk about another card on here that's another Floodgate that is kind of similar. That also, this is a mainstay in like Draco and Eldritch. And what this is really nice about is when we get formats of the event type Draco can't be running this anymore. Of course, they can do skill drain, but they can't run this specifically. So maybe Draco will get outside of the events of just running Draco. Remember when it was all synchro, all Xyzs, all fusion, whatever have you? It was mostly Draco because it was easy to build, and you could just throw in floodgates and we're good to go. So Vanity's Emphasis, we're good. We're by. We'll talk about Celestial in just a second. Gossip Shadow. This is to hit Rongo Bongo. With PK, but PK is kind of sidestepped that. They took the left turn on the fork rather than the right turn, and they're moving towards what we saw in the TCG, which was Adventure, DPE, Dagda, Scythe Lock is what they've kind of moved towards. And so, because it's a lot harder to interrupt than Rongo Bongo. But Rongo Bongo is also an OTK in a sense. So, but this basically just stops Rongo Bongo without directly banning Rongo Bongo in the first place, which you should. You should ban him. I don't understand why you ban the Gossip Shadow when Gossip Shadow isn't the problem. It's Rongo Bongo that's the problem. But that's typical Konami for not hitting the problem card, which we will discuss. So Celestial. We'll talk about the ban of Celestial and the limit of Fusion Destiny to 1 at the same time. Celestial is a good hit. Don't get me wrong. Celestial is a good hit. Basically what this means is when you make DPE, you're not drawing 2 afterwards anymore. You're not Pot of Greed, draw 2, after you've made one of the most powerful boss monsters that there is. That's helpful. Verte Anaconda staying in the game means that this limit here of Fusion Destiny to 1 means absolutely nothing. Verte Anaconda is still in the game. Fusion Destiny can still be sent, and you can still send Malicious, and Denier, and you can still make the cards. You can just have Celestial plus Denier, and there you go. Or sorry, you can have Dasher plus Denier, and you're good to go. Dasher will be able to reveal the special summon on draw phase. Denier do some special summon shenanigans if you control another monster, so it's just more monsters on board. So the thing is they don't want to inadvertently hit Verte because branded stuff is coming down the line. There's some like, I don't know. Not only Verte Anaconda being banned means that we have the branded stuff, but we also have the Predaplant stuff that got printed in Dimension Force, I believe it was. Not Power of the Elements, but the set before that. So like in May, we had Predaplant stuff, and that support Verte got banned after that, like immediately after that support got released, and so we never got to see what they would do together. So they could be holding on to Verte Anaconda and kind of waiting to see what happens there. I think having Verte is okay. I don't like Verte, but I don't hate Verte Anaconda, just because it does enable some fusion decks to do some things. Send Shaddoll fusions, send Super Polish, send Fusion Destiny, send Branded fusions, send Fright for a fusion. You know, you can do a bunch of things with Verte Anaconda that's cool, but at the same time he's oppressive. Any 2 monsters, and there it is. Whoop, there it is. So the limit to Fusion Destiny just means it's less likely that you open it, which just means it's more likely that you're making Anaconda to send it. And if you do open it, you don't have to make Anaconda to send it, and there you go. It's pretty simple. So ultimately, it does nothing. The Celestial to draw 2 is a good hit. I will say that that's a good hit. But I these limits don't really do anything. So let's talk about Crossout Designator. Crossout Designator was everywhere in the Duelist Cup. I played a lot of the second stage. I say a lot, but it wasn't actually that much. This card was everywhere. Literally everywhere. And for good reason. It's a direct counter along with 2 Called by the Grave. Because if you play the TCG or want to play the TCG, the actual TCG ban list is 1 Called by the Grave, 3 Crossout Designator. Master Duel is now 2 Called by, 1 Crossout Designator. What this does is it inherently buffs all hand traps, which in theory is really, really good, right? You need to stop that Moye from activating its effect, so you Valor it, and they just chain cross out because you can have 5 copies of a hand trap negate, 2 Called by, 3 Crossout, so you have 5 copies of a hand trap negate, and you know, this is your only point of interaction, or else they're going to full combo and you lose, and you basically just lose the duel. But this also makes it so you yourself have less chances to see things that you need to do your combo. So it works both ways, but what it really does is it buffs Maxi. Maxi is crazy. This card is super oppressive. People don't want to play against it. Will do everything they can. Use their own Ash Blossom in their hand to make sure it stops. That card is crazy. And we're seeing basically B Trooper, which can search Maxi. Now mind, they can search Maxi, and not only can they search it, they can protect it from Called by the Grave. There is a combo where you can just protect your Maxi in the graveyard. So they can't Called by it. So they have to open the 1 Crossout Designator, and then you can protect your Maxi, because if your opponent has a card in the graveyard, a monster in the graveyard, and you have an insect in the graveyard, the B Trooper Sting the Lancer can summon itself, target the Maxi, target the opponent's monster, shuffle them both back, Called by can't resolve. So now you have 1.5 counters to Maxi, plus using your own Ash Blossom that could be used to stop your opponent instead of using it so that you can combo. So Maxi is very dangerous right now. There's 3 ways to negate it rather than the 5, plus the Ash Blossoms if you want to count them. So it's really kind of scary in my opinion. I think the Crossout limit sucks. I think it's really, really rough. At the same time, can be really, really helpful for players who seem to always get hit by Crossout. When I was in the Duelist Cup, I could Ash Imperm Maxi, and they would always have it, and I could never feel like I could play the game afterwards. So maybe this will actually be more impactful than I'm letting on. It will maybe help the players who do have interaction not lose to my opponent's counter interaction, because I only have 1 Imperm or 1 Ash Blossom or 1 Veiler, and they seem to drew 2 of the 3 of the Crossouts, so that's very helpful. We'll talk about Meow Meow Mew real quick. This does nothing. This does literally nothing. Prank Kid's insane deck. It's still crazy. This deck was the best deck of the format in the TCG. It's the best deck in Master Duel, hands down. What were they expecting? Like this Meow Meow Mew hit does literally nothing. Not a damn thing. We'll talk about Pot. Pot hurts. You could argue Pot is an indirect hit to like Eldritch. Pot is an indirect hit to like Floowandereeze. So you know you have the Floowandereeze and the Eldritch archetypes. Eldritch just uses Pot of Prosperity, banishing 6, you know, to find their next Floodgate, or to find the Golden Lord, or to find the Golden Land. I mean, now they just play 3 Extrav, if they were even playing Extrav at all. I mean, it doesn't hurt that much. Floowandereeze, this is a crazy deck. This deck, most like competitive builds are playing 2 Pot of Extrav, 3 Duality, 3 Pot of Prosperity. So Prosperity's down to 1, so you play 3 Duality, 3 Extrav, 1 Prosperity, and now you have an extra card that you get to just do something with. Whether it be another hand trap, whether it be another consistency piece, whether it be some of the Samorg stuff that people have played in the past. Let's see, the 4th place tournament for the North America qualifier played some Samorg stuff. It's really, really, really strong and really, really consistent. So you have that. So, I mean, the hit kind of hits these 2 cards, or these 2 decks, but really it kills a lot of other decks who need that Prosperity consistency. So Prosperity is a really, really good card, and in my opinion, these cards that draw 2, Desires, Extravagance, Prosperity doesn't really draw 2, but it digs 6, so digging 6 is insane, because usually you just find your extender or your combo starter. The OCG limited this card a while back, and I think it's really helpful. I think having the pot cards at 2 is better than having them at 3. Having them at 1 just feels sacky. If they draw it, that's great. If they don't, you just hurt the consistency of the rogue deck, or you hurt a little bit of the consistency of the top meta deck, but it's just going to play Desires now, or it's just going to main deck Talents now. instead. So now they have room for main decking tactical talents where they should draw 2 or rip a card or take a card. So it's hard to say. You just made room for other cards to kind of be in there that are not as good, but basically fill the same void. So there's no change to Eldritch or Floowandereeze or even Prank Kids in terms of this ban list. That's really all there is to it. So we can go ahead and talk about the semi-limits here. Multi-Faker's cool. I think the TCG has this card at 3. It's not doing anything. It's why play Altergeist when you can play Eldritch is basically the point. It's a good deck, but I wouldn't play it over Eldritch in my personal opinion. But it's still fun to play. Tanky to 2. I don't really know why Tanky's at 2. Tri-Brigade's still good. Like, Tri-Brigade Zodiac is still really good, but I don't see it nearly as much as I see everything else. Sword Soul, for instance. You see way more Sword Soul, Adventure Prank, Eldritch, than I do any Tri-Brigade cards. And I play the Tri-Brigade Leerless deck, and they already hit that deck. They already hit Fractal, and they're now hitting Tanky. It's like Tanky to 2 seems like just a really silly choice, in my opinion. And it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't really hit anything. So it is what it is, but there it is. Skill Drain to 2. Okay. You think hitting Skill Drain and Pot of Prosperity doesn't mean that Eldritch will just not play just another Floodgate? You can play Summon Limit. You can play Tikaboo. You can play Rivalry. You could play Gozen Match. There's still a bunch of problematic freaking Floodgates in the game. Skill Drain to 2 just means it's even sackier because it's less consistent. Neat. Cool. Thanks. It's not helpful. It just means that this won't seed as much because you can't dig for 6. Not gonna matter when they can flip Tikaboo, Rivalry, and the like. Doesn't matter. It doesn't help at all. It just doesn't. Let's go ahead and talk about this guy right here. This is something I'm personally excited about. Griselda 2! That's hype. That's the best thing I've seen on this ban list. All of it. All of it. Griselda 2, Salamangreat, really powerful. What a strong deck. And you can play it multiple different ways. You can play Salamangreat as a trap control, a hand trap control, a combo. It's crazy. You can do so many things with this deck. And I love it. There's even some adventure Salamangreat builds that are really interesting because you don't necessarily need your normal summon to activate in the field. You don't want to activate Fox's effect when you summon it. Let's see, what's its name? Buffalo activates in Grave, so I don't really need my normal summon. I can set up an Omni Negate, protect myself against Nibiru or other card interactions, and then just combo. And Gazelle at 2 makes it way easier now that I also have Circle at 3. So that's crazy. I think Gazelle at 2 is great, and we're going to see a lot of this on my channel because I love this deck. It's so good. It's so fun. I love it. Night Assailant to 3. It had an errata, so it doesn't matter. That's great. Let's talk about the big misses, though. I want to really hound on this. Konami, please. I know you don't listen. I'm a small Yu-Gi tuber. It doesn't matter to you. Ban this card. Ban this card. This card should just stop. See, OCG. Banned. Banned. Ban this card. It's oppressive as hell. It just, any 2 cards, one is a tuner, one is not, can turn into this guy and extend, and he enables one of the most toxic things to sit through on Master Duel. Frickin' Mega Phantom Beast Auroradon Synchro combos. Ban this card too. See, look at that. TCG, banned. Boom. Get it out of here. The only reason it's not banned in the OCG is because this card's banned in the OCG. This card needs to go. It needs to go. There's no reason this card should still be allowed to be played in Master Duel and still think that it's a good place and a fun place for casual players to play the game, because these combos are so oppressive and it sucks to sit through, and no opening hand can really stop it unless you open Dark Ruler no more, and not many decks are main decking Dark Ruler no more. It's really frustrating. Please ban this card. Please ban this card. It sucks. Ban Verte too, to be honest with you. Ban those cards. They need to be banned. Another thing I wish would have got hit is Sword Soul. Sword Soul got off completely scot-free. No limits to any of the Tenyi monsters. No limits to any of the Sword Soul monsters. Nothing. They are full power, full consistency. It's miserable to play against. Almost every other duel is this deck. So I wish we would have just done something. Specifically, the Tenyis or extenders. If you hurt the consistency of the Tenyi monsters, of the worms available, is the word I'm looking for, then you kind of hit the consistency of the Sword Soul things to do their combos, because they have to reveal the worms. So I think hitting Tenyis, limiting some of the Tenyis, would have been much more valuable. But those could have just been replaced with other worms that maybe didn't do anything, or are more bricky than anything. So who knows? But they got to figure out something. But this, yeah, this could be a problem. You're going to see a lot of this deck. You're going to see a lot of Floowandereeze. You're going to see a lot of Prank Kids, because that is the top decks. If you're trying to climb ladder, you have to be prepared to fight those decks. So that is going to be the it of the ban list discussion as a general overall. Now we're going to talk about how the ban list kind of impacts this channel and what we play. And I hate to say this, but this deck has too many hits to really keep playing it. And I say that because Prosperity going to 1 hurts the consistency. So when this deck was really popular, Nadir Servant was at 3 in the TCG. And then, they hit it to 2, and Prosperity was still at 3, and this deck was still insanely playable because Nadir was so accessible. Nadir is the whole bread and butter of the deck. It's what makes the deck do its things. The Invoke engine is amazing, don't get me wrong, but setting up Mechaba to protect your Winda is incredible, because it's way easier to out monster floodgates than it is to out spell and trap floodgates. There's just more built-in things to negate monster effects than there are that people main deck to do than there are spell and trap negates. So for instance, most competitive decks play Droplet, play Imperm. There's 6 copies in a deck to negate a monster. 6 copies. And one of them you can't respond to. And the other one is a trap card, and it's a lot harder to keep a trap in hand with this deck than it is anything else. So Mechaba can't necessarily negate it. So I don't see Winda being that big of a floodgate problem. It becomes a bigger floodgate problem in the TCG right now with Tier Element, but that's a topic for a different time. I don't find Winda to be that oppressive personally as a floodgate. Not because because I just play it, but because there are more people are already playing Imperm, people are already playing other cards that stop monster effects. So outing Winda is just another monster effect that they have to negate. It is a problem. Not many people main deck this spell and trap removal. Usually it's 1 Harpy's Feather Duster and you hope you draw it. Not 6 copies. I digress. This deck, in the terms of how IDS was when it was in the TCG, is now gone, basically. To play this deck, you basically need to play the 60-card Shaddoll Grass version for it to be really impactful. We'll try it out on the channel, but I think playing the 60-card or pivoting to more Shaddoll heavy, like we did originally, would be a little better for us. But the consistency really hurt it, and this already was only a rogue deck at best. Now it's just gone lower on the rogue deck tier. But let's talk about the winner of this, and that's Salamangreat. I cannot wait to have Gazelle at 2. I haven't had Gazelle at 2 since I've started playing the TCG. Started playing the TCG because I saw SEMO videos about how cheap it was to get back in the deck by buying 3 Salamangreat structure decks, Soulburner structure decks. They came with Ash Blossom. I bought them off Amazon for like $40 total for all 3. Got my 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Got my Gazelles. Got my Wolves. Easy peasy. It was nice. And the ban list dropped before they arrived. They were supposed to arrive on Tuesday. The ban list dropped on Monday, and Gazelle and Circle both went to 1 from 3, and so I haven't ever got to play with them at 3. So I'm very excited to at least play at 2. This card is crazy, such an enabler. You can play Trap Control, you can play Adventure, you can play Combo. This card's nuts. I mean, you can even see down here, this card is still limited in both the TCG and the OCG, but they're trying to semi-limited in Master Duel, which I think is weird. Maxi is a card. Maxi, if Crossout kind of hurts because if your opponent draws Maxi and they drop it on you while you're playing Salamangreat, you pass, or they're drawing 7 cards. You just have to pass, or they're going to draw 7 cards, and it just doesn't. There's nothing you can do about it. So it kind of hurts a little bit in that aspect, but Gazelle's still really good for consistency, and you don't have to play Prosperity. You can play Desires instead. So it's a really, really good card. I look forward to playing it more on the channel because I think that's what we're going to pivot to. Probably play a little bit of Shaddoll, Invoke Dogmatica. More Shaddoll focused than Invoke Dogmatica focused. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for joining me. This is my take on the ban list that has happened. I'll look at it here once again. It's a step in the right direction, but it could be better. We could be seeing more hits to some of the floodgates. Looking at you, Wind Barrier Statue. It's the same as Window, Titus. No, it's not. It's not the same. It's not the same because Fluundereeze can access it on my turn. That's why it's not the same. Okay, it's kind of the same. You're right. Ban Window. Yeah. Ban Window. Thanks, guys. Happy dueling.